The Colts and Lions are through with their joint practices and are ready for Saturday's preseason game. We'll tell you all about what we learned about this team on today's episode of Locked On Colts. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, I told you guys we were bopping to this. Colts fans, thanks so much for tuning in and making us your number one listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Elias. Their app lets you access team and player stats, head-to-head team comparisons. Give yourself the edge this NFL season. Find the Elias game plan in the App Store or Play Store today. I'm Jake Arthur, and I'm joined as always by my partner, Zach Hicks. On today's show, we'll dive into day 2 of the Colts and Lions joint practices. We'll tell you what we learned about this team this week and who we really want to see play a lot of snaps in Saturday's preseason game. So, Zach, we'll start out with the injuries as always. Guys who were not out there today were wide receiver Kiki Qt, linebacker JoJo Doman, offensive lineman Dennis Kelly, defensive tackle RJ McIntosh, safety Will Redmond, cornerback Isaiah Rodgers, safety Armani Watts, and defensive tackle Chris Williams. Cornerback Anthony Chesley returned after missing some practice earlier in the week. And then we did get a little bit of an update on Dennis Kelly finally, because he's been out since the first week. Let me see. Frank was asked about that today. Frank said he's making good progress. We talked to him this morning. He had a procedure and everything went well, and he's doing very well. Again, they talked to him this morning. He's in good spirits and making good progress. Doesn't give super ton of clarity, but I mean,
that's Frank Reich clarity right there. Frank Reich clarity is, it's good. He'll be fine.
Yeah. So
that, and then he misses 10 weeks. So
that sounds about as clear as it was with Shaquille Leonard, but We'll see. Right. He'll be back when he's back. To no surprise, Drew Ogletree was placed on IR this morning, pretty much confirming the diagnosis of the torn ACL. After practice, Coach Reich said that it was just the ACL, so pretty, cut and dry. When these guys tear up their knee, a lot of times there's other ligaments with it, so it's just ACL, and that's usually a 8-month recovery, I believe he said. So they can't put a firm timetable on that because everyone's kind of different, but. They're hopeful he makes a full recovery, comes back stronger next year. Silver lining, if this was going to happen to him, at least he's got a year to recover from it. So,
no, it's just so unfortunate. Again, promising rookie, having his season cut short. I mean, he's not going to be able to play at all as a rookie here, and he'll be going into his rookie season next year as a 25-year-old. So. It's tough, man. It's tough. We talked about it a lot yesterday, though, so we don't have to go back into all that. But it sucks to see that with a young player.
Yeah, sure does. Just kind of hitting some highlights here from the day. So yesterday, I told you guys I watched the offensive side of the ball because the offense and defense are playing on different fields simultaneously. My eyes can only be in one spot, not 100 yards apart.
Come on, Jake. Do better. Better. Right. You got to just run back and forth. That's what you got to do.
I need Inspector Gadget eyes.
There you go.
No, but so I watched defense and special teams today. But from what I heard, offensively, the Lions' defense kind of caught up to the Colts' offense, and it wasn't necessarily the buzzsaw that they were yesterday. But still, Jelani Woods and Mike Strachan apparently had good days. I heard Strachan had a pretty good downfield back shoulder catch against the sideline, which is a lot of what we saw last year. Basically, what you see from Alec Pierce is a lot of what we saw from Mike Strachan last year. So kind of similar players, but Strachan is bigger. Jelani Woods apparently was making some catches in traffic, so that's good to hear because he's had a problem with his hands throughout camp. So having the distraction of catches in traffic and actually coming through them, that's definitely good.
Yeah, no, it's a huge opportunity now for Jelani Woods where, he was kind of falling behind Drew Ogletree on the depth
Mhm.
chart, and now with Drew Ogletree out for the year, Jelani Woods slides into that next man up role. And honestly, that next man up role behind Kylan Granson is not too steep of a hurdle. Kylan
Yeah.
Granson is a talented player. He has flashed a lot here in camp, but he's also had a lot of issues with drops. So that's definitely not a player that Jelani Woods can't pass at one point this year. So if he continues stacking good days like we continually say, and that just brings into the season, he could certainly become tight end 2 before long. And then Mike Strachan, I mean, that's good to see that he's having a great camp again, because wide receiver 5 is wide open for the taking. So
Mhm.
if he can keep, like I just said, stacking good days and performing here against competition, I mean, he can take that wide receiver 5 spot.
Yeah, I think we'd be hearing even more about Strawn this week if not for he had this catch in the back of the end zone, but he just barely could not get that second foot down. It almost looked like he was doing the 1 foot college rules thing.
Yeah.
But no, he nearly had a nice touchdown yesterday in the back of the end zone, but he's looked good since he returned. I missed his first day, but I've liked what I've seen and heard about his return since he's been back. It's practice number 3, I think.
Yeah.
But the guys I actually watched today, 2 of the defensive veterans that I would think had the best days, Tyquan Lewis and EJ Speed. Tyquan, second team defensive end there. He just always found himself in the backfield. He's not flashy, doesn't have like super athletic moves. Like you don't see him doing all this flying around like you will with Yannick Ngakoue. But I just feel like he knows how to counter moves and disengage from blocks. Like I think that's how he wins. Just from when I see him getting into the backfield, that's how it is. He had a sack today, and he was in on a lot of, tackle for loss, mob situations, getting the running game in the backfield. So big day from him. And then as for EJ Speed, he and Nick Cross came up and just kind of obliterated this run in the backfield. And then he also picked off Tim Doyle. Doyle rolled out. Byron Cowart flushed him out of the pocket. Doyle threw it about 12 yards in the end zone, and Speed was right there and came up with the interception. So that's a guy who's really taking advantage of the snaps he's seeing with Shaquille Leonard out.
Yeah, I mean, EJ Speed's probably going to be a starter at the beginning of the year, if Shaq Leonard is out for a bit, which it seems like he will. So EJ Speed has prime opportunity to make, his second, third, maybe fourth career starts. We don't know how long it could be. So EJ Speed's going to play a lot, which is great to see him taking that next step here in camp. But Tyquan Lewis is interesting because I think Gus Bradley spoke the other day, and, I wasn't there, but I got the transcripts of it. And one thing that Gus Bradley brought up was that fourth rusher with DeForest Buckner, Yannick Ngakoue, and Kwity Paye, and he brought up Tyquan Lewis. We've all been under the assumption that it could be Dio Dangbo, it could be maybe Grover Stewart gets more, something like that, but he went out of his way to bring up Tyquan Lewis and say we're going to get him in a lot of those situations. So Dio Dangbo has all the potential in the world, but he is still a young, basically a rookie that's still learning what to do as a pass rusher. So freaky, but he still doesn't really know what he's doing out there. Tyquan Lewis probably does bring the best pass rusher at the moment. So it might be more Tyquan Lewis and Dio Dangbo in that role this year.
Yeah, he's a lot more polished than Dio is right now for sure. Right. And I don't want to say I'm shocked, but I am super surprised at how far along he already is. The fact that he came off PUP so quickly to start training camp after that patellar injury, because they've literally done studies. That patellar injury that he had, that's the hardest injury for NFL players to come back from. And he's back looking like it really never happened. Like he's being just as productive as he was last summer. You know what I mean? So he looks pretty good. A couple other guys, the backup or the rookie defensive tackles, Curtis Brooks and Eric Johnson, they both had big plays today. Brooks really was one that stuck out to me. He just blasted through the line and just got penetration, totally disrupted the run play. Eric Johnson, and these guys both got plenty of run with the ones today. Eric Johnson recovered a fumbled quarterback running back exchange. Jared Goff dropped it, or however it happened. Johnson was there to fall on it. And then there was kind of a funny play. They were missing a nose tackle on the play against the ones. And I think it was Curtis Brooks yelling to the sideline, "We need another tackle. We need another tackle." And Johnson comes running on and then gets the sack on that play. So I was like, it's like almost if you're just in a hurry and don't have a plan, you just go and get to the quarterback. And that's apparently how he wins there.
Yeah, no, it's good to see these rookies really stepping up because, like we've been saying, there's not really much clarity behind the two starters on the inside at the moment. So having those guys having big days in the joint practices, which we've been saying are really important all off season, that goes a long way. No, because at the end of the day, they're still the younger guys that the team just spent investment on. So when in doubt, the team is going to keep those two over, RJ McIntosh, Chris Williams, Byron Cowart. But as long those guys need to have big days still, so that's good to see those guys continually showing up here in practice.
Yeah, a couple day 3 picks for the Colts could pay dividends for them, but you know what could pay dividends for you guys? If you're living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to make ends meet, it can be really, really stressful when unexpected expenses come up. Now, Dave can help you get out of a pinch when you really need it. Car stuff, pet stuff, medical bills, what have you. Adulting ain't always easy financially. I think we all know that. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Future you will thank you. And thank you guys again for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. However you play, get the latest NFL fantasy draft tips from Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty. Plus, starting August 22nd, next week, we're bringing you daily top 10 lists for Fantasy Draft Week. Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so, Zach, we got 2 days of practice against a totally different team. They'd been going against themselves for 11 days prior to that. It's time to talk about what we learned about this Colts team. So just from what I've seen, starting offensively, going against a different secondary finally and not having Stephon Gilmore all up in his business all day, every day, Alec Pierce looked pretty good against guys who are closer to average cornerbacks.
Yeah, no, Alec Pierce, I mean, it's weird because I think there was this weird misconception that he didn't play well against the Bills in the first preseason game because he got beat by Kyer Elam on that short third down conversion play. Elam just made a great play. It happens. But outside of that, I mean, Alec Pierce had a really strong preseason game against the Bills. He made a couple catches, had that one in the red zone where he shook his guy in press coverage that he just didn't get targeted, which was a really, really clean press rep. And then he carried that good performance this whole year. I mean, earlier we were talking about how he played well before the joint practices, and then in the joint practices, by all accounts, he was kind of the star of the week. So Alec Pierce is, again, we keep saying stacking good days, and we keep saying you want to see these guys perform against higher competition. Well, I mean, these past couple weeks, he's been playing against Stephon Gilmore, making some more plays against Gilmore than he should be probably. And then in the Bills preseason game, he went up against a first-round corner and made a couple catches. Now this week against a pretty decent Detroit Lions secondary. Like, I'm not saying the Detroit Lions secondary is the best in the league, but against a pretty solid Detroit Lions secondary, he's still making plays. So, I'm not going to say Alex going to come out from day one and be a star for the Colts, but he is starting to show that growth, and he's showing that he can be a player that, can produce a little bit here in year one.
Yeah, I think what's so big about this is for a young receiver who's still developing, of course, wide receiver seems like one of those positions where a lot of your performance is based on confidence. Like when you're feeling really confident and you feel like you can do this, you're more likely to go win that contested catch and show some more attitude when you're doing it and things like that. When you're a rookie and things just are going real slow and you're not doing well, you're probably going to play a lot more timid. But now he's making plays. his quarterback's throwing to him in tough spots. That's going to give him a lot of confidence. So that's one of the biggest things I'm happy to see.
Yeah, the Colts are playing his development so well right now because it's such a different – it's a very different story than what it was with Michael Pittman Jr. When Michael Pittman Jr., when he came into the league, the Colts said, okay, you may not be ready against press coverage or to do the things of a number one receiver, but we're going to let you do something that you're really good at, which is run after catch. So his whole rookie season, it was all run after catch stuff. Now with Alec Pierce isn't that same guy. He's not a run after catch guy. He's not what Michael Pittman Jr. was. He's going to be a guy who has to face press every single snap in the NFL, most snaps in the NFL. And that's something in college that you don't really get prepared for unless you're facing Sauce Gardner in practice, which I'm sure that was a great matchup for him. But in college, you don't really get prepared for it because teams don't press as much in college as NFL teams do. So the Colts are literally throwing the kitchen sink at him all offseason, from Stephon Gilmore every day to, Kyrie Elam was in press a lot on him this past weekend. He got to see really good experience with that. And then here against the Lions as well. So the Colts are they slow play a lot of development, but they're kind of fast playing this one where they're just throwing everything at him and seeing how he adjusts. So, I'm not saying he's going to be counted on to be 1,000-yard receiver in year one, but they're expecting big things because they are throwing everything at him and seeing how he's reacting to it.
Yeah, I definitely feel a lot better about him now than I did a couple weeks ago. Not that I felt negatively about him, but I wasn't ready to say he's going to be an awesome second receiver all year. But yeah, I feel better about him now. One group, I don't want to say I feel bad about him, but I don't think it is as much of a slam dunk as people thought. The offensive line for the Colts has been the cornerstone for the last several years. And people always say, they have Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, they'll be fine. Which to an extent is true, but this line has not really looked great in these two practices. First and second team offensive line, you'll probably mention it, but across the board in the NFL, it's bad football generally.
Right.
You're not necessarily a unit, which that's a group that's really dependent on that. It's a bunch of individuals. But no, from what I've seen, the protection's been really leaky. I thought guys like Aiden Hutchinson was all over Matt Ryan yesterday. I heard it was pretty similar today. Now it's training camp, so it's tough to gauge this, but the running game hasn't really got going. It's been a lot of clogged runs at the trenches. It's not looked great. I heard Nick Foles got sacked 3 times within one stretch today. So they're working in, new left tackle Matt Pryor, right guard and Danny Pinter. Pinter's probably not as well equipped to deal with power guys on the interior at guard, like you talked about yesterday with Aleem McNeil. But I don't feel warm and fuzzy about the offensive line yet. I'm gonna need to see them really string together some strong performances.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Again, we're coming off a year where the O-line was not playing their best football. Even Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith, who are two players at the top of their position, were not playing to their capability last year. So they have a lot to prove this season, and hopefully that they can. But yeah, like you said, if you're not showing it in these joint practices, again, these are the closest thing you get to games here in the offseason. So they definitely need to bounce back here in the dress rehearsal against the Bucs in a little over a week.
Yeah, and then another area I thought was I think the secondary is for real. It's a really unheralded group of receivers for the Colts they've been going against, so it's no surprise they've looked as good as they did. But, the Lions don't have a terrible receiving core either. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a really good young player. You and I are both pretty high on DJ Chark. Josh Reynolds isn't bad. TJ Hawkinson factors into that as well at tight end. And I thought the Colts secondary did really, really well against these guys. There was some issue today where Goff found one of his receivers on a post for a 50-yard touchdown. I don't know if the safety just didn't stay back where he needed to be or whatever, but that was about the only big issue. Otherwise, I thought guys harassed the receivers really well. I really liked what Brandon Faison did today. They're just aggressive. They play the ball. They don't want to. It's so crazy because we're used to seeing so many easy receptions, cheap receptions given up. These guys don't want to give up a yard. It's a totally different tone in pass defense now with Gus Bradley.
Yeah, just to say this real quick, because I know we need to move on here, but this is a very versatile and athletic secondary that Gus Bradley's been working with. And I think the main difference is last year with the Raiders, Gus Bradley was kind of pigeonholed into a lot of things with that secondary. It was either a young secondary or it was kind of like an old and over the hill secondary. Casey Hayward and Desmond Trufant aren't what they used to be. And then you had guys like Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Moehrig. And then you had Jonathan Abram, who was amazing in the box, but you couldn't really disguise things because he couldn't cover or play deep. With this Colts secondary, that's going to be, you have your defensive player of the year caliber guy. You have a Pro Bowl corner. You have two safeties that can rotate. They can be a strong safety or they could be a free safety. Those two guys can, it doesn't have to be Nick Cross in the box every single snap. So it's a very versatile, young, athletic playmaking secondary. And I think we're going to see a lot more of what Gus Bradley did with his Chargers secondaries than what we saw last year with the Raiders, where he just kind of sat in cover three all the time. So I'm really excited about this young secondary. Before we get to our last segment here, guys, about who we are going to look forward to in this last preseason game, we have to get a little serious here. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Just to open up to you guys a little bit, I was an 18-year-old kid. I left college. I came home to my parents, and I really had no clue what I was doing. I had to deal with the struggles of being like a failure in life and all that stuff. And I turned to my parents and I turned to therapy, and it really helped me out. Life is full of twists and turns just like that, and it's important to show up for yourself through it all. BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 40 hours. Like that, I mean, I went back to a therapist that I was seeing in high school when I got back out of college, and she really helped me overcome a lot of anxieties and fears that I had as, again, an 18-year-old kid who was dealing with feeling like a monumental failure. It's okay to not be okay. And I know as a guy, we kind of just throw all that stuff inside, but it's okay to talk to someone. You can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. And getting therapy every week is as easy as a few clicks on your laptop or phone. With therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit for you. BetterHelp makes it easy and free to change therapists if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/lockedon. All right, Jake, let's get to this last segment here. Talk about some guys we're excited to see. And the Colts actually have a really rare opportunity in this upcoming preseason game where they're going to be playing almost all of their backups. But the Lions are going to play their starters for a little bit from everything we've heard, at least their defensive starters. So when it comes to wide receiver 5, or it comes to, because I'm assuming Alec Pierce will play a little bit just because he's not like one of those like bona fide starters. They want to get him more reps. So for guys like Alec Pierce and then all those guys that are fighting for wide receiver 5, from Mike Strawn to Desmond Patman to Michael Harris, he's still kind of in that. This is a huge opportunity for those guys. And I'm excited to see kind of who takes the reins of this spot. Because again, right now, we have no clue about wide receiver 5.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And with QT, I am assuming, he hasn't practiced all week, so I assume he's not going to play. It's really Desmond Patman versus Mike Strawn, and I would let these two play the entire game. Why not? If you're not playing the starters and guys would play the whole game anyways. I absolutely, for developmental purposes, and because you gotta figure this battle out. So definitely Desmond Patman versus Mike Strawn. If Strawn can handle it with his knee, but he's been full go throughout this week. But that's definitely one I want to see. That's Nick Foles in the quarter that he's going to play. I think he's going to really want to grip it and rip it to these guys.
Yeah, I think that's so important for those guys. And then another thing, again, goes with this. We're going to see the Colts' backup offensive linemen playing a couple series against the Detroit Lions starting defensive line. Can Bernard Ryman step up to the plate against Aiden Hutchinson? We'll see. Aleem McNeil versus Will Fries and Wesley French. I think it's going to be a good test for those guys. Even if they fail miserably, at least they'll have that experience that otherwise they probably won't get before the season starts.
Yeah, I think we might see. So from what I remember correctly, I think Hutchinson was lining up at left end, so he might be up against
Murray.
Murray. Yeah, it'll be
Oh,
Murray, and then Charles Harris against Ryman. So, and they'll flip off. You know they will, but
we need Dennis Kelly back for this preseason game just so the offense can move a little bit then.
They probably just need Ellinger to play quarterback the entire time so someone can escape the pocket when they get pressure. Yeah. But to a similar degree as these receivers, I really want to see Jelani Woods play a lot. Again, developmental snaps, plus with Ogletree going down, that's going to put Woods in a bigger role now. So we've got to see him play as much as possible.
Yeah, and could a guy like Michael Jacobson steal a roster spot now? You know, we were saying all offseason that the Colts are going to roster 4 tight ends, and why that seems unlikely now. Michael Jacobson had a pretty good preseason game last week. You know, he's had a decent camp from everything I've seen, so maybe he could steal that 4th spot. You know, there are roster spots up for grabs, so I think there's a lot of fun things to watch on the Colts offense, even though we're not going to see like any starters outside of maybe Alec Pierce, maybe Danny Pinter. Like, I don't think we'll see many other starters.
Yeah, Coach Reich made it sound like basically he said not all, or it's not like they're going to play no starters, but exactly fringe guys like that will probably see some snaps. We briefly mentioned Bernard Ryman. Get him out there, play him as much as possible, which if last preseason game was any indicator, they probably will do. I think we both really want to see these young defensive tackles, Curtis Brooks and Eric Johnson. Johnson's really heating up because Brooks was more polished coming in, obviously, but Johnson is starting to make some plays here.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to see them carry that into the game because honestly, and you know, I'm so high on both these guys, but watching that Bills game, I didn't think either really stood out that much. Johnson had a couple nice run snaps. Curtis Brooks showed insane like burst off the line of scrimmage, but he just didn't really do anything with it against the Bills. I want to see them kind of be a little more productive, be more of an impact in the pass game or even in the run game as well this week against the Detroit Lions, especially if they're going to be out there against the ones for maybe a drive or two. I want to see those guys at least get some push and get a little bit of production against starters because that's who they're going to play in the season if they're rotational guys.
Yeah, and I think they will probably see a lot of snaps because RJ McIntosh has been in and out of the lineup all summer. Cowher, I think, probably will play. He was just in there today. Chris Williams, obviously not. So that's really going to, you know, they're not going to play Buckner and Grover, really. So those 2 guys are probably going to get a ton of time. EJ Speed would be my next guy, although he's probably going to be a starter if actually he will be if Shaquille Leonard is not out there. That's another guy who can make plays and needs as many snaps as possible because he didn't get to play too many last year.
He's too good of a player to be out there against backups in the preseason game.
You think so?
It's weird. He's like a fringe starter, fringe backup in the NFL right now for me. Like he can, by all accounts, he can be a starter linebacker in the NFL if he's ready to take that step. But right now he's like a fringe player where like when you see him out there against backups, it's like, okay, this guy's clearly on a different level than these guys.
Yeah.
But you don't know if he's ready to be that starter yet. So yeah, it should be fun seeing him out there against the Lions when he's definitely like a head above the rest of the players that he's going to be playing against.
Selfishly, that's kind of why I want it because it would just be fun to see him out there, basically being like the second team's Shaquille Leonard out there because he does just play different when it's against backups, especially now that he's getting it more. Marvell Tell is another guy for me. I think it was funny because, you know, you and I have talked about, especially you mentioned, he was tailor-made for this defense when he came into the league, and now he's finally in the defense, and he's starting to show more development. Someone else said they thought the same thing today, and I was like, yep, we've kind of been hammering that on the podcast. But yeah, let's see him rebound because he kind of had some rough moments against the Bills.
Yeah, I want to see him and Tony Brown really solidify their spots in this game. You know, I want it to look like, okay, those are your rotational, your bottom of the roster corners. You know, I don't want it to be like, all right, they're getting toasted every snap. They're not guys who make a team. You know, and Marvell Tell, honestly, for a lot of last week, looked like that. He looked like a guy who, it's just a preseason corner out there. You want to see him bounce back. You want to see him have strong snaps, especially in press coverage. So I think that's where he really struggled a week ago against the Bills. And given he was mostly lined up against Isaiah Hodgins, who's probably like a wide receiver 4 in the NFL, like a pretty good player. But yeah, you want to see him bounce back. You want to see him have a strong week because last week it didn't really solidify anything for me.
No, certainly not. He definitely still needs to work. And my last guy, and you can add anyone else if you want, Rodney Thomas. I'm just kind of waiting to see something from him. The Colts placed him as the second team free safety on the initial depth chart, which doesn't mean a lot, these unofficial depth charts, but it was a little surprising because he has started to see more reps with the ones and twos occasionally. So I just want to see really anything from him. Like, he's still developing, sure, but they obviously see something in him. I'm not saying he's a bad player by any means. I just want to see something. I want to see some flash plays from him.
They might be trying to hide him for the practice squad, though, so you might not see too much of him.
That makes sense. That really does.
Yeah. But no, I don't really have much more to add. I think we kind of hit it all, and honestly, we're running kind of out of time here anyway. So you want to close this out here, Jake?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and put a bow on it. That is it for us today. We'll be back with you guys on Saturday after the game. It's a 1:00 kick at Lucas Oil Stadium. Also, if you guys tune in locally to WTHR, you might see a familiar face here. I'm gonna do a little post game hit for Channel 13 there. There's some people unavailable, so they said, let's get this idiot on TV. So be sure to tune in there, and hopefully it doesn't go poorly for me.
They went deep on the bench there for you, Jake. That's what they did.
Yeah, they went pulling for weeds. That's for sure.
Yeah. Make sure you guys are following us there on social media at Jake Arthur NFL on Twitter, at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Follow our written work at horseshoehuddle.com. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Locked On Colts YouTube channel. I think it's at like 8:30 right now. Like we
are getting there.
We're getting close to 1,000 before the end of August, so that should be exciting. Yeah. And then wherever you listen to the podcast, rate, review, subscribe. We appreciate all the comments, especially the feedback and stuff like that on things you like and don't like about the podcast. We love incorporating that into the show. So even if I'm not replying in the comments, I do see it, and we are doing our best to kind of incorporate that stuff. So you guys keep it up.
Yeah, for sure. Because, we do this show for you guys, so we obviously want you to enjoy it. But thank you guys for joining us again and making us your first listen of the day. Now make Locked On Fantasy Football your second listen. Find the intellectual fantasy expert, Vinny Iyer, who brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and a unique angle to give you all the moves that no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football today. We'll see you guys on Saturday.